Do you have to go to school in order to make a living making music? No, you don't have to. But a degree in music or even studying with a private instructor can go a long way in helping you develop the skills, the experience, and the networking you're going to need to be a successful composer. We're going to talk about that as well as look at a Central Asian infused cue written for a taxi listing on my Week 20 vlog check in. What is happening, YouTube? This is Dave Croft. Welcome to my 52 Cues weekly check-in. This is week 20, where every week I check out a cue that I wrote the week before, and I talk about it, also talk about things that are going on maybe in the industry or questions I've had or just whatever is kind of going on in my life. If this is your first time here, welcome. Welcome. So glad to have you with us today. If you haven't already, why don't you hit that like and subscribe and all that typical YouTube stuff that really does help composers just like you find the channel. And before we get started, I want to give a special thanks to my Patreon patrons who, with their support, help keep this channel happening. We're going to have a lot more about Patreon there at the end of the video. Speaking of at the end of the video, if you want to skip over the vlog parts and go right to the breakdown of this cue called Silk Road Border Crossing, which was written for a taxi search looking for a Central Asian traditional minimalist cue or minimalism cue, then check out the timestamps below. But I really wanted to talk about school. And do you have to go to school in order to have a career in music? And the short answer is no, you don't have to at all. There are so many resources available to you now more than ever that it is not a requirement. There is really nothing stopping you from vacuuming up all of the information that YouTube and the internet and books have to offer. So I'm just going to say that right out of the gate. And if you disagree with me vehemently, then we could talk about it in the comments. But I want to talk about school and colleges and higher education or working with a private instructor. Now, full disclosure, I teach at Full Sail University. And if you're not familiar with Full Sail is an entertainment industry media school, meaning that they train filmmakers, computer game designers. They also train computer animation specialists, music production, recording arts, guys to go into the studio, guys to run live sound, folks that are ready to go into the entertainment industry and the media industry. And so I teach music production. Specifically, I teach production music, library music at Full Sail University. So every month I get a handful of students, a batch of students, and I walk them through how to write cues, and I talk about the different types of cues and working with libraries and royalties and all of that stuff. So full disclosure, and this is not an ad for Full Sail at all. Wherever, if you don't go to school or if you want to go to school, you don't have to go to Full Sail. You can go to Berkeley. You can go to UNC Greensboro. You can go to USC in California, wherever. I'm here to talk about what school is about and why I think it's super, super valuable. And also, full disclosure, I am a private instructor. I teach students privately through Zoom online. I also do cue feedback. And if you've been watching the channel, you know that I do a Feedback Friday. Try to do it about once a month. That's where I listen to cues and give feedback. But I also do instruction, like feedback videos for students. They send me their cues. I give them my thoughts, breakdown, form, and all of that stuff. But this isn't an ad for that either. I just want to talk about the idea of either going to an institution or going with an instructor. And you can kind of break it down into three parts: skills, experience, and networking. Skills, experience, and networking. So let's talk about skills first. You can learn a lot just by soaking in things off of YouTube, the internet, audiobooks, printed books, Kindle books, whatever. If you're watching this, then that's what you're doing, right? You subscribe to the fact that you can watch a video and learn, and absolutely 100%. So am I contradicting myself? No, because I believe that going to an instructor or enrolling in a school is going to help show you things that you don't even know you don't know, and can really give you a fast track and can give you prescribed classes and a methodology to get you to your vocational endgame. And those skills that you don't know yet that you need them. Even if you're going to a traditional 4-year school where you're taking, like a communications class, or you're writing papers, or you're taking a math class or geology or whatever. I am of the belief that all of those classes all mash together to help you in your career. If it's a creative writing class, then that's going to pay off in spades when you need to write letters and pitch letters, or write metadata for your library cues. If you're taking a math class, and you're working with cut downs, and you're having to, maybe you get a gig working with game audio, and suddenly, that calculus class that you had to sit through, and that statistics class or whatever, now suddenly, wow, you're applying things you didn't even know you needed. Now, some of that is just, trusting that the school you're enrolling in is there to get you to that end game. And I really hope that if you are enrolled in a school, or if you're taking with a private instructor, that I hope your goal isn't to get the degree, right? I hope you realize that the piece of paper at the end, the alphabet soup that goes at the end of your name, whether it's BM, BA, a BS, or MMUS, or PA, whatever alphabet soup you put at the end of your name, that's not the goal. The goal of going to school is to get all of the skills along the way, so that by the end of it, by the time you graduate, you are equipped and trained and ready to take on the industry. I know at Full Sail, we're all about that. I know I can't speak for all of the classes, but in my class, every single assignment is tailored to help apply a skill or a technique that can be used, specifically in my class, in library music. If you go sit down with an instructor, and they're helping you along the way, either with mixing or EQing or whatever, and then they give you an assignment, or they say, hey, work on this, and you show up the next week and you haven't done that. If you are enrolled in a school, in a class, and you sleep through class, or you never show up, or you cheat. I got to be honest, I've never understood students that cheat, especially students which are dropping tens of thousands of dollars. I get it. I know why a student would cheat, and they cheat because their end game isn't to learn necessarily. Their goal is to get the piece of paper because they believe the piece of paper is going to get them work. But that's not the currency. The currency of a degree isn't the degree itself. It's everything that the degree implies. And if you can't do the work, especially as a musician and a composer, if you can't do the work, then the degree is only there to help with maybe an introduction, or with the networking, or at least get your foot in the door. But for me, the degree is really about proving to yourself that you finished this thing, and it proves to yourself, and yes, the world, but mostly, in my opinion, to yourself, that you saw this thing through and that you have the skills that this degree represents. And if you cheat your way through it, then you might have the degree, but you don't have the skills. And quite honestly, you're not going to be competition. Is that too real? I hope that's not too real. Because every one of my students is a potential competitor of mine. I teach library music, and I compose library music. Now, I personally believe that the industry is big enough for all of us, and God knows there's enough TV getting made that all needs music. I think the table is big enough for everybody. If you've been following the channel, you know my 2020 mantra is together we are better, and I wholeheartedly believe that. That's what this whole channel is about. That's why I teach lessons. That's why I do the Feedback Fridays. That's what the Patreon's about, and the music production live streams. Together, we are better. But if you cheat your way through school, you're not going to be competition. You'll have the degree, yes, and you can hang it on your wall. But man, if you can't do the work because you cheated on your music theory tests or your music history tests or whatever, well, that's probably money wasted. This is I didn't mean for this. I didn't mean for today's vlog to be so soapboxy. But you have to trust the institution, or trust that the institution is going to give you classes which are going to get you to whatever vocational end game you want. And if you don't believe that, then you're in the wrong school. Now, I'm not saying you can't disagree with the institution. I'm not saying that there isn't room for improvement. There aren't areas to better. Absolutely. We're all human, right? I get it. No institution is perfect. But if you're taking like class after class and you're like, why do I have to take this? Why do I have to take this? Why do I have to study theory? Why do I have to learn ear training? Why do I have to learn arranging? Or if you're in my class, why do I have to learn about library music? Or why do I have to learn about game music? Why do I have to learn about film music? Why do I have to learn about sound design? These are all classes that are baked into a Full Sail's degree. Traditional school, why do I have to take an ensemble? Why do I have to take a private lesson? I want to be a composer. Why am I taking drum set lessons? Because it's going to make you a better musician. It's going to give you a much deeper insight into how that instrument works. So, schools, private instructors, they can give you those skills and give you a much faster, a much more linear path to that end game. Not to mention the evaluation and being able to like, hey, put your hand here, or let's try this. Let's look at your arrangement, and this is how I would change it. This is how I would fix it if I were you. So, institutions, schools can give you those skills. They can also give you the experience. In my class at Full Sail, they write 3 cues. They write, they do a modeling exercise working with references. They write a hip hop cue and a tension cue. And then they work on stems and cut downs. They also work on metadata. They work on writing, talking about their music using, complete sentences and writing like a 250 word, like discussion post and all that stuff. There's a discussion board. And if you're kind of out there on your own, then you don't have those experiences. You don't walk away at the end of a program, whether it's Full Sail or Berkeley or USC or University of Anchorage. At the end of your program, if you're a composing major, then you end up with pieces, compositions that you can put in your portfolio. And then you can say, I studied with this person. I have experience in this. Studying composition at Appalachian State University, I got early experience in working with MIDI sequencers. And I didn't have to just kind of fumble around it myself. I got experience writing and doing arrangements for a steel band. And I got that music played with other human beings and by other human beings. I got to study Middle Eastern percussion. I never would have been able to do that, and got into an ensemble that did that. I had the experience of studying with instructors from New York, instructors from Colorado. My percussion instructor was from the Manhattan School of Music, a very prestigious school. And here he was teaching at this small college in the mountains of North Carolina. And so going to school can give you those experiences. Those are very difficult to make on your own and to have on your own. I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying you can't work up a portfolio by yourself in your studio. But man, an institution, a college, can absolutely have that. Private instructors, they can point you into those directions. They can tell you, write this, and here's all the feedback. and get you experience in these areas that you wouldn't have had. And then finally, the networking. So we're kind of going from skills, which is you can really learn a lot on your own, all the way to things which are virtually impossible on your own. Not impossible, but virtually impossible. And that is the networking aspect. Believe it or not, schools, believe it or not, the guys you meet and the girls, guys, gals, folks, the people you interact with in school are going to resonate throughout your life probably a lot more than you realize, especially if right now you're in school and you're like, this idiot? Yeah, maybe. There are classmates that I've had at Appalachian State University who I am in touch with to this day, and many are very, very successful. I have a classmate of mine who is a band director and writes arrangements for middle school band. He has a very, very lucrative side gig as a professional composer of middle school music. A buddy of mine is the principal timpanist for the Piedmont Symphony, I think, Catawba Symphony. Very, very talented timpani player. Actually had him on my podcast back in the old Drummer Talk days. Drummer friend of mine was a drummer for Sarah Bareilles. Now I think he's on tour with Jennifer Nettles. Super talented guy. One of my really good friends from Appalachian State, Jason Graves, wrote the music for Dead Space. Wrote the music for Order 1886, among many others. Very, very talented, very successful guy. And we were in the same steel band for several years at Appalachian State University. That kind of networking is really difficult to pull off on your own. And when you're in it, you don't know. I mean, this is Josh. He's super talented. I could totally see why he's touring with Jennifer Nettles right now. This is Jason. Oh my gosh, that guy's work ethic is through the roof. No, yeah, it's obvious. But you just never know where those relationships are going to pan out and what relationships are going to stick. And I'm not talking even about like fellow composers. At Full Sail, the music people talk to the film people. The game people talk to the music people. The recording people go and talk to the show production people. Just passing in the hall. We were in the same class together. We were taking a science class together, or we were in music history together, or whatever. And so it's not going to be unusual for those types of relationships that get forged in the heat and the fire and the crucible of college. It's not unusual for those relationships to resonate all the way throughout your life. And I don't mean just friendships. I'm talking about professional relationships. So, do you have to go to school in order to make a living making music? No, you absolutely don't have to. And the industry is full of people that didn't. And that's awesome. But the industry is also full of many successful composers who did. And I believe, and I'm certainly biased, I'm wearing my bias on my sleeve here. I believe that going to an institution, studying music, can go a long way in getting you to where you want to be faster and maybe even in a straighter line. So let's check out this week's cue. It's called Silk Road Border Crossing, and it was written during a recent music production live stream, and it was answering a taxi listing looking for minimal, and I don't mean minimalism like Steve Reich kind of thing, Philip Glass minimalism, minimal in terms of density of arrangement, minimal Central Asian traditional cues. And so this is Silk Road Border Crossing. right, that was Silk Road Border Crossing, and the search was looking for, like I said, Central Asian infused traditional instrumentation, but minimal. So not super heavy, not super dense. And so they listed some countries like Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Afghanistan. And Afghanistan, if you look at like Central Asia, it's kind of like those countries: Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, all right there. And then you have the Middle East kind of right underneath it, and then India. And I said this during the live stream. We like to put these countries kind of in their own box and say that this is what Afghan music sounds like. This is what Iranian music sounds like, and this is what Indian music sounds like. This is what Russian music sounds like, and this is what Greek music sounds like. But like cultures, they don't necessarily have hardline borders, and especially music and the influence that different cultures bring across the border in their musical styles. Now, admittedly, and I've turned this in. I don't know if it's gotten forwarded or placed or whatever yet. My background is in Middle Eastern percussion, which is like Iraq, Iran, Middle Eastern, Egyptian. So this might lean a little too Egyptian with like the doumbeks and the frame drum and the bindir. And the bindir is that's an Egyptian instrument. But I also am bringing in some sitar-like drones with the santur and the kanon. I'm bringing in these sounds which are kind of more Central South Asian and really blurring it all together. We'll see if it gets placed. I had a really good time writing it, but I'm using traditional type Middle Eastern rhythms. And I did a lot of referencing, listened to a lot, and I noticed a couple of things. First of all, the rhythms are very, very almost hypnotic, very repetitive, and I don't mean that pejoratively, but they're very cyclical. The rhythms are kind of over and over. The use of the drone, so harmonically it wasn't moving around. And the instrumentation that I'm going to be using is we'll start from kind of the bottom. My main rhythmic driver is this doumbek. Doom tech tech doom tech tech doom tech tech doom tech, which is that's not a maksum. I've forgotten a lot of like our baladi, but there's a name for this rhythm here. And so I also have a 22-inch frame drum. So layer those on top of each other. And then I have a bindir. And what a bindir is, it's like a frame drum with wires or catgut, and in my case it's nylon string, strung across the back. It's kind of a proto snare drum. So let me go forward a little bit. Go forward a little bit more. Then I bring in a shaker, which is actually a rain stick played as a shaker. Later, I bring in a second doumbek. This doumbek 1 is it's a synthetic doumbek, but it's more like a clay doumbek. This doumbek 2 is an aluminum doumbek, so it's a really high. So you put those together, and then I have finally a 14-inch frame drum. So put all of these together, and you get my rhythm section. Then finally, I have some frame drum effects where I took my friction mallet. And a friction mallet is one of these guys. It's a rubber bouncy ball on a stick. I think I've talked about it on the stream before. And then you kind of rub it, and you get this like almost like a whale song type of a thing. All right, so that is my rhythm section. I do have a couple of other just little effects, a little hand roll, and then a doumbek pickup. This is the frame drum effects at the beginning. It just sounds really cool, very kind of creepy. Okay, so then we have some drones, and my first drone, I can't even remember. I don't think it's a sitar. I'm totally flaking on the name of the instrument, the tanpura. And then I have a duduk, which is a double-reeded instrument. I believe it's a double-reeded instrument, kind of related to an oboe or a bassoon. So that's kind of cooking along. That's east-west. These are all east-west here. And then the high duduk comes in. Almost sounds like an erhu, which is a Chinese fiddle. And then finally, we have our strings. Now, in the references that we were given and in my own study, strummed stringed instruments were pretty prevalent. And I was at a little bit of a disadvantage because I don't play any of those instruments. And the samples I have, especially like strummed sounds like this, can be a little sketch. They don't sound that great. So I kind of leaned a little bit more into the hammered type sound. And so this is a Santur from East West. The East West Silk and Raw libraries are really good for this type of sound. Then my Canaan, which is doing an Indian type of almost like a bhangra. Bhangra music is a little bit bouncier, you know, that kind of vibe to it. So this is kind of a bhangra lick that I flattened out. Now, if we're looking at the arrangement has your typical phrasing. You know, I'm thinking of adding layers. In this case, because they wanted minimal instrumentation, I'm thinking in 8-bar layering here. So we have 8, 8, 8, and 8. Start off with just a little intro, establish the drone, bring in the duduk. But even though this is a larger 8-bar phrase, I do increase the complexity of the bindir. Make little edit points here, trying to create at the end of every 4 bars a little breath, a little lift, if you will. Now here come the higher drones. The Santur gets a little busier, and the bindir gets a little bit busier. here comes the bendir. The bendir is going to get a little bit busier here. And a little lift in the phrasing. Big stop right here. Now I bring in the final Dubeck line, just adding additional rhythmic energy as we're approaching our button. And then into the final downbeat. And there's the final, there is the final button. So pretty typical arrangement in terms of library music. Every phrase, I'm looking to add a little bit more energy. They were looking for about 2 minutes. It might be a little too dense. It might be a little too busy. It might be a little too African or Middle Eastern as opposed to Central Asian, but we'll find out. I certainly had a good time creating it, and I certainly enjoyed getting my doumbek and flexing those Middle Eastern percussion chops that I talked about learning earlier in the video. So that is Silk Road Border Crossing, and we'll see how it goes. We will see how it goes. Like I said, that was written during a recent music production live stream. I do music production live streams every Thursday evening or sometimes afternoon, where I open up a DAW and I write a cue from scratch. This one, I hadn't loaded up anything. I opened up the DAW, I scanned through the taxi listings. I'm like, hey, let's do that one together. I talk about my process, and I go from beginning to end. Sometimes I'll circle back on the following Monday and do a mix down of that. If that's something you are interested in, then please check out my Patreon at patreon.com/Dave Croft, because the music production live streams are a benefit for my patrons. Also, like I said at the beginning, if you haven't hit that like, subscribe, notification, all the standard YouTube business, please consider doing that. It helps feed the algorithm and helps composers just like you find this video. So I hope that you have a fantastic week 21, and I will see you next time, where who knows what cue I will be talking about. It's probably going to be a dramedy cue, but that's coming up next week. But until next time, peace.